Welcome to Wadsworth History on Film, a program presented by the Wadsworth Area Historical Society and designed to record the oral history of Wadsworth for posterity. I'm Cesar Carino, your host, and our guest today is Jack Golz. Jack, I suspect that of all the people we've interviewed, that more people probably know you from the various things that you've done in town and for the fact that you've been around for 1,000 years and all of that, than probably anyone else we've had. Now that's saying a great deal, because everyone we have had so far has been extremely well known, extremely popular, but you happen to have those vocations, and I didn't say occupations, those vocations where the kids all knew you, and as they grow up, more kids are alive than the old timers, so everyone in town knows you because, first of all, you've always been in athletics, you've always been in recreation, and for a long time there you drove school bus.
Right.
You drove school bus. So the kids all know you. As a matter of fact, today is October 3rd. Now, we typically don't mention dates on the air because these programs run all the time, but since I have to give this as part of the story, I'll mention October 3rd. A young lad who was born 34 years ago today, my son Michael, was on your school bus when he was in kindergarten, and he got off at probably at Overlook School.
Yeah.
And he thought that's where he's supposed to get off. And then, for whatever reason, you went on, and he was supposed to be going to Isham School. And this little 5-year-old boy, first day of kindergarten, walked all the way down to Isham School. And instead of going to Isham School, he asked where the school is, and someone pointed to Valley View, and he walked all the way up to Valley View. And someone called from Valley View and said, we have a little lost boy here. Didn't seem to bother him too terribly much, but must not have hurt him too much because he's 34 years old now, and at that time he was only 5 years old. So
I don't remember that.
No, of course not. I mean, not your fault, obviously, because he got off the bus. And but you drove bus, so everyone for the past, when did you start driving bus?
About 1961.
So everyone for the past, 35 years or so knows you that way. And when did you start working with the Recreation Department?
In 1952.
So for the last, from 52 to 97 is 45 years.
Yeah.
So for the past 45 years, every kid in Wadsworth probably knows who you are. And that's why I say that you don't need much of an introduction, because you have all of these kids who still know you, and they're still alive, and they still know who Jack Golz is.
Every now and then I'd have a kid come up there, an adult come in at a grocery store somewhere and say, you used to drive my school bus. I know him when I see him.
Of course.
Can't remember the name.
Can't remember the names. Now then, Jack, you were born, weren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Where and when?
In Akron in 1924, February 7, 1924.
In Akron.
Yeah.
And then when did you move to Wadsworth?
When I was 2 years old.
So you have no recollection of anything except Wadsworth. You went to school in Wadsworth.
Right.
Born in 1924, so you probably started school in 1930 or so, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And where did you start school? Where were you living in Wadsworth when you started school, Jack?
Down in the south end on Main Street.
On Main Street. What number was it? Do you remember?
Boy, I don't. It's
Okay, where is it located? Where's the house?
corner of Walnut and Main.
Corner of Walnut and Main. That's where the Golzes lived. G-O-L-Z, right?
Right.
And who were mom and dad?
Leo was my father, and Florence was my mother.
And Florence who?
Florence Ryland.
Ryland, R-Y-L-A-N-D.
Right, and they lived on Burgee Street.
And the Rylands lived on Burgee Street.
Right.
Burgee Street. That's why you came back to Wadsworth, probably.
I think so, sure.
Probably so. So she has been in Wadsworth for many, many years, and her family's from Wadsworth then too. Then you were the firstborn in the family, is that correct?
No.
No.
I'm fourth.
You're fourth. Who
Yeah.
was before you?
I got three sisters, Lucille, Thelma, and Florence. They're all older than me.
And you are now what?
73.
73. So how old are the three sisters, and where are they? Are they still with us?
Lucy's what? She's 10 years older than me. She's 83.
83.
And Thelma is 76, and Florence would be 75.
75. And they're all living?
And then my younger sister, Edith.
Edith, of course.
Married to
Edith
Bob Miley.
right.
She just turned 70, I think.
That's right. You're right. Edith turned 70. She graduated in 45. And you
Right.
graduated in
42.
42. That's right, exactly. Now, as you were growing up in Wadsworth, what are some of the memories that you have that were very fond, particularly in the South End? What was the South End like at that time, some 70 years ago?
by the railroad tracks. Used to be a big old wooden building. It was a grocery store.
And who had the grocery store?
I think Curtis.
Curtis grocery store, Roy Curtis.
Roy Curtis.
Right. And when you say by the railroad track, where was it exactly? The building is no longer there, is it, Jack?
Down the north side of the tracks on east or the west side of Main Street.
West side of Main Street. There's no. What is it? There is a building there, but it's not that one.
West Food is there right now, but where the store was, I think, is their park up there now.
There's a,
between the West Food and the tracks.
and they parked there.
Yeah,
But
the
there was
employees of West Food.
That's right. There was a grocery store was right there. Now, who lived in the South End? Who were your friends in the South End at that time?
Oh, we had all those Italian guys, Joe
All those
Laparo.
Italian guys. Joe Laparo. We're going to have Joe Laparo on this
Are you?
program. Oh,
Good.
yes. And who else?
Some black people, Gus Mills,
Gus Mills.
Levi Mills.
And where did they live?
They lived in a house beside the railroad
Right next to the depot, right. Right east of the depot on the
Right.
same side, right next to the depot. And somebody else, anybody else that you can remember? And what did we do? Did we have games? Did we play? What did we do?
Yeah, it used to be a lumber yard down there. It was Wadsworth Lumber
Wadsworth
Company.
Lumber.
We spent a lot of our time climbing in and out places on that lumber yard. But we didn't, I don't remember playing ball or anything too much with neighborhood kids.
You did not play too much ball, but you were a ball player.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to be talking about that. Now, tell us about, before we get too terribly far, tell us about your own personal life here, starting from the time that you were born. You went to school, you went to Franklin, right?
Right.
Who were some of the teachers you remember in Franklin School?
I remember one teacher, Dodo, Mr. Dodo.
Mr. Dodo?
Yeah.
Was that his real name?
I think it was.
What did he teach?
Third grade, something like that.
Mr. Dodo.
I think that was his name, yeah.
Well, it's entirely possible.
That might be what we called him.
I'm afraid that's what you called it.
Could have been. I remember one time in the wintertime, I was a little kid, somebody dared me to throw a snowball at his car, and I did and hit it.
And
He had me right in his room as soon as he got in the building. Didn't do anything, but he talked to me a little bit.
he talked to you a little bit. And do you remember any other teachers down there? The principal, maybe?
Was Mrs. Ringer down, Miss Ringer?
That was many years
Elsie
ago,
Ringer?
Elsie Ringer,
Yeah.
many years
Yeah,
ago, right? Principal, remember that principal at all?
No, I don't.
Probably had one for 2 or 3 buildings at the time. Then you went to the junior high school.
Right.
Remember any of the teachers there?
Oh, yeah, Mr. Patterson,
Mr. Patterson,
Mr.
Lloyd
Giffen,
Patterson,
Kenny Giffen,
Kenny Giffen,
Art Wright,
Art Wright,
Russ Doan.
Russ Stone. Now, these were high school people, though.
Yeah.
What about the junior high?
I remember I had freshman English with Gloria Lester,
Gloria Lester,
Chester Hawk.
Chester Hawk, right. Mr. Hawk. That's a good memory. That's a good memory.
That's all.
We are asking all of our people who went to Wadsworth schools who their teachers were, so that we will have a composite of all of these names, and we'll try to get them. We could, obviously, we can get
Doris
them.
Bachman
Doris
taught art.
Bachman. Everyone had her.
And I used to have a singing teacher, the 6th grader, her name was Helen Lackenmeyer.
Helen Lackenmeyer.
And she,
Okay, that's the first name. First time that name has come up.
She was tough.
She was tough, but she was a singing teacher. Did you sing?
Oh, yeah,
You
I
sing
sang
quite
a
a
lot
bit.
when I was young, yeah.
No.
I don't know why I ever stopped.
Well, I don't know. It'd be a good thing to find out. You went to high school, and after high school, what was going on in the world?
War.
War. Where did you go? What did you do? You were drafted?
I graduated from high school in June of 42, and February of 43, I was in the Army, and I was in there 43 to 46.
43 to 46 for 3 full years. And where were you in the service?
Camp Swift originally, we were in Europe, we'd combat in Europe, and we were one of the lucky outfits that got redeployed to the South Pacific.
So you went from Europe to the South Pacific.
Well, we started to go to the South Pacific. We went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, supposed to get some amphibious training, and we didn't get it. They shipped us right out, and when the war with Japan ended, we were on the water headed for, supposed to get re-outfitted in Cebu in the Philippines. We got to Cebu, and they let us off the ship. There wasn't any equipment there at all. Somebody knew that war was going to be over.
Well, that sounds like it from what you just got done saying. Jack, when you got out of the service then, which was 1946, the world was a little bit better off than it was before, during the war and all of that, but things weren't yet 100% right. What did you have to do to start a life?
First thing, go back to work.
Right.
I worked at the High Mast Company.
Doing what?
I was a printing press operator.
A printing press operator. I was hoping that you would say that because you're the first person we've had who's been a printing press operator. Who were some of the people in the printing department at the time?
Oh, a guy named Red Toombs and
Red Toombs.
Joe.
Red Toombs lived on Burgess Street, didn't
Yeah. Can't think of Joe. Joe was a foreman. Harry Harry Williams, was that his name? Yeah. Not Williams.
he? Not Williams.
Harry Thomas.
Harry Thomas, right.
Yeah,
okay.
black guy. He was a fine man.
Yes, he was. And who else? Who was the boss?
Art Keller.
Art Keller. And Art Keller lived on Durling Drive.
Right.
Right. And Art Keller died not too long after
Yeah,
that, didn't
yeah.
he? Keller, there's a little story about the Kellers too. Art Keller's father had the farm, am I correct, where Overlook School is right now. And they tore the farm down. There used to be a beautiful built barn right there, and it had a straw stack in the front of it, and then he tore that down. They made Overlook School. That was the Keller farm. And Art Keller then built a new house in those days down on Durling Drive. And Art Keller was a printer, and a very fine printer. Did Enos Nolt work there at the time, do you know?
No. I
No,
don't remember
didn't
that
know,
name.
didn't work there at that time. Who else worked at the mat shop at that time, and who were some of the people that you remember from the mat shop?
Joe Lucas.
Joe Lucas. And who was Joe?
Joe was the son of Tommy Lucas,
Tommy
the
Lucas.
ex-police chief.
Chief of
And
police.
him and I worked together in the machine shop
Which machine shop?
at the match company.
At the match. So you went from printing to machine shop, right?
What they did, they bought some new presses, some what they call rotogravure, and they shut down our presses. And we had to look for another job, and I went in the machine shop.
And who was at the machine shop and the match shop at that time, Jack?
Oh, Billy Bell.
Bill Bell.
Skinny Mager. Remember him?
Who?
Skinny Mager.
Skinny Maker. What was his real name?
I don't know.
Jim? No, Jim was at the injector.
Jim was a brother, I think.
Jim was in the Clarence Mager.
Yeah.
Clarence Mager, because Sid Mager worked at the injector also, didn't he?
Right. Joe Hartman.
Joe Hartman, Big Joe.
Big Joe.
Big Joe Hartman.
And can't think anymore. Bobby Leonard.
Bob Leonard, right? Anybody else?
There were more. I can't think their names.
Well, if you
We
think
had
of them, you can bring those up a little bit later on. What did you do then after how long did you stay at the mat shop?
I worked there from 1943 until
46.
46, yeah.
Yeah.
46 to 57.
57. So you were there for 14 years.
Yeah.
And then in 1957, you decided to take a completely different avenue in life. What was it?
Recreation.
And how did that come about?
Well, I had worked at the Recreation Department as a part-time supervisor from 1952 until 57.
Right. And who was with the Recreation Department at that time? Somewhat loosely controlled, was it not?
Oh, yeah. Ed Dew was the director, and we had...
DEW.
Right. And he resigned and moved to California, and we had Carol Transu.
Carol Transu.
Betty Eckhoff, who is Betty Smith now.
Betty Eckhoff Smith. And Betty Eckhoff was the daughter of Charlie Eckhoff, who had the Echo Grill
Right.
right by the tracks in the south end on the east side of the road. Betty Eckhoff was a swimming instructor as well.
Oh, yeah.
And she married Buster Smith or Dale Smith. Right. Now, they were in charge of recreation, as it were, but we had no place for recreation at the time, did we, at the time?
All we had is the Civic Center.
We had the Civic Center at that time.
What is the Senior Center now?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, in the meantime, we're going to get to the Recreation Department and the full-time job that you had there, but in the meantime, you got married. Whom did you marry, and tell us all about that.
Rosemarie Doyle.
And where was Rosemarie Doyle from?
She's from Wadsworth.
Wadsworth. Who were her parents?
Hugh and...
Huey Doyle.
No, Hugh. Not Jimmy. Hugh.
No, Hugh Doyle. Okay.
And what the heck was her mother's name? I can't remember. Hazel? I don't remember.
Your mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Now,
I never knew her.
No, right. And Rose Doyle had brothers, and
She has a brother, Joe Doyle, who lives in Florida.
right.
And she has two sisters, Eileen Aldifer
Eileen
and
Aldifer.
Doris Miller, live here.
And Who's that other one?
Doris Miller.
Doris Miller, right, who lives here
They live in Wadsworth,
Eileen Aldifer still lives in Wadsworth. Right. The Doyle family was a big family, and they lived where?
They had a grocery store next to the railroad tracks in Silver Creek.
In Silver Creek. That was Huey Doyle.
Yeah.
Right. And what else do you remember about them? They weren't living in Silver Creek when you married your wife then?
No, that all was gone in it. I understand they had a big fire and it burned down.
That's right. It was in the 20s.
My wife was raised by her uncle, Urban Kunkler. Her mother died when she was 6 months old.
That's right.
And a man in Urban Kunkler raised her and her sisters and two other boys, Bob Mason and Jim Mason. Or Jim Mason? And that's when I married her.
You married her?
1947.
1947. What day?
May 29th.
May 29th, 1947. Married here in Wadsworth?
Yep.
Right. Now, Jack, we can come back to this in a minute if we have some more things to talk about, but we want to hear about the Recreation Department in the City of Wadsworth. That's one of the main reasons we brought you here. But while you were still making some kinds of negotiations for the Recreation Department, you started driving bus. When did you start driving bus, and who were some of the people who were driving at the time?
I started in 1961. A guy named Dick Phillips was a driver, Dale Morrison.
Dale Morrison.
Bertie, can't think of her last name, it was Dale Morrison's daughter. And Thelma Rogers and Clyde Rogers.
Clyde Rogers.
Harold Farnsworth.
Harold Farnsworth. I'm trying to think of Bertie's maiden name. I know who it is.
Bertie Morrison.
Bertie Morrison, but this is her married name.
Yeah, I can't think of her.
It'll come to me. I know it very well. Oh, not Kelly.
Yeah,
Kelly. Yeah, Kelly. That's right. Yeah, Kelly. And she married about Jim Kelly, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jim Kelly. And who else was driving bus?
I can't think of anybody else.
Yeah.
Oh, Leonard Sega.
Leonard Sega, that's right. Where was your route?
I had the north part of Wadsworth on Good Avenue, and then I came down to Silver Creek, went through Silver Creek, up Durling Drive.
I picked up my son.
Yeah, picked all those kids up down through there.
That's right. They regarded you as probably being more authoritative than any of their teachers.
Yeah, but you couldn't do that today.
No, but you could,
yeah.
And you did. You didn't take any lip from any of them, not at all, and that was good. I wish we could do that again today. So you drove bus, but in the meantime then, you decided that you wanted to get into the recreation business. How did you evolve from becoming a part-time recreation person to becoming a full-time director of recreation for the City of Wadsworth?
In 1956, Ed Dew resigned and moved to California. And I applied for the job, and since I was already, I had the inside track, and I got the job.
And what were some of the things that you had to do as the very, very first issue as the new recreation director?
Well, try to line up some new programs. We didn't have very much money. We
didn't
only
have
had
very much at all going for you.
$25,000 run that whole department. One full-time employee, everybody else was part-time.
$25,000 ran. How many parks?
I don't think there were about 4 or 5.
4. How many buildings?
Just the one building.
And how many swimming pools?
Just one.
And where was it?
In Grandview Avenue.
And how many hours a day?
Oh, I used to spend maybe 12, 14 hours a day.
Every single solitary day?
She used to get mad at me.
Every single solitary day?
And we had...
How many days a week?
I was on call 7 days a week.
7 days a week.
Get me 7 days a week, yeah.
And do you remember your salary, if it's not too personal?
Yeah, I started out at $4,800 a year.
So for $4,800 a year, most people work 2,080 hours a year. Most people do. You worked at least 1.5 to 2 times that many hours every single solitary week. So you were working probably over 4,000 hours a year, according to my calculations, and you were making about $1 an hour.
Yeah.
And how long did you do that?
Till 1957 when I started in 57. And I guess it took maybe 6, 7 years to get up to $10,000.
A long time.
Yeah.
And you're still working about 4,000 hours a year.
All the same.
And in the meantime, you had some people helping you, but not too many. Who was helping you at the time?
Carol Transu and, well, I think Carol was there after Betty Eckhoff was there first. And then she got a job teaching school.
Right.
And then Carol came in after her.
Isham.
Yeah. And then we had Andy Orris.
Andy Orris. Now tell us a little bit about Andy Orris. Now you know him very well.
Oh, yeah.
Andy's older than you are.
Yeah.
Andy was born in 1921. And tell us about Andy Orris.
He was a fun-loving guy. He was a counselor at the high school. And he worked as a part-time supervisor at the youth center or civic center. And then in the summertime, he ran a swimming pool.
Right. Describe him physically.
Oh, he was, what, about 5'8", 5'9", maybe 170 pounds, black curly hair, was a good football player.
Darn good football player. He surely was. He was fast and strong, very, very strong. Where's Andy now?
He deceased.
He's died. I hate to say these things, but for the historical evidence, we have to say when did he die?
I think about 6, 7 years ago.
Yes, at least that many years ago.
Yeah.
Andy,
might have been longer. Yeah, it's been longer than 8. Maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, he died about the same time my brother did, which is about 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago. And they both graduated at the same time, both went to school at the same time.
Yeah.
So we're talking about some very good people who no longer with us. Now, Andy Orris, what were some of the things that Andy Orris brought to the recreation department? You say he was a counselor at the high school.
Well, he was a good one to have around as far as discipline.
You bet. That's what I wanted to hear you say, the discipline part of it. How did Andy handle discipline?
Well, back in those days, you could handle a kid if you wanted to. I've seen him pick kids up and put them up against the wall and their feet are a foot off the ground and tell them what they could do and what they couldn't do.
And never got in trouble with it. You've been retired for a few years, but even the last years that you were involved, could you do that?
Yeah. No. You couldn't touch those kids.
Couldn't touch them. You know, we always talk about those kinds of days that we had and the good discipline that we have had and how it has unfortunately degenerated at the present time. Let's go from the time that you were the director of the youth center and go with the progression from going from the senior citizens center as it is right now, which we call the rec hall, right? We call the rec hall, and the swimming pool. And give us that progression of how we went from there to Steiner Youth Center and what had to happen all of those years.
Well, back in the late 60s, the Recreation Commission realized that every year the pool we had, which is all above ground, and it was what, 30-some years old.
It was 1943, 1943.
It was opened up in 41, I think.
41.
And they realized that every year it cost more money to get it ready to go. It was just falling apart, you know. So they decided to form a committee and see what they could do about building a new pool. And the committee, they went to different towns and looked at different side pools and investigated it quite a bit. And in the meantime, Bill Heil came up and told them that there was a trust fund available in Wadsworth, which nobody knew about. Henry B. Steiner, who used to be an automobile dealer here. And
Steiner and Rohr.
Yeah, it was worth around $350,000. And so it had to go through court, the Medina probate court. And I forget who the judge was, Kellogg? But they took it to him and he looked at it and he said, well, he said, it has to stay in Wadsworth. Can't use it anywhere else. But instead of a swimming pool, I'd like to see a recreation facility. And that was the start of that. From that point on, they started thinking about a recreation center.
I was on council when we built the recreation center, or the Steiner Youth Center, I should say. And I remember that there were so many legal hurdles that we had to overcome because Henry Steiner had died, and he made a provision in that codicil of his will that said that it had to be used for underprivileged children in Wadsworth, and no one else, I think it said that any child, no one could ever be refused because of inability to pay, which was a very, very nice thing for him to have said. So we did it that way. And we built the building, and as a matter of fact, it seems like yesterday, but it's been how many, 20 years now?
Yeah, it was opened up in 1973.
1973, so that's 24 years.
Yeah.
I can't believe that it's that many years, but 24 years ago that was built, and it was opened up. And when you start moving things from the just the physical aspect, the logistics, moving things from the rec center up to there, how did you do that?
Well, we didn't take any of the tables, chairs, or anything because we had all new stuff at the center. We took basketballs and equipment like that, but everything else we left there for the senior citizens.
Who did the moving for you?
We did it ourselves.
Did you yourself? Who were the we's that you're talking about?
Oh, Andy and Carol and myself.
Well, that's it. Well, actually, that same crew did everything for the recreation
Right.
department. If there was painting to be done, you had to do it. Cleaning to be done, you had to do it. How many times did you have to pick up a broom at the end of the day to clean the place
man,
up?
a lot of time. I remember the first year I was recreation director in '57, we had covers to put on the windows at the swimming pool, and for some reason they didn't get put on when they closed the pool. So on January 1st, Carol, Andy, and I were out there putting those covers on.
Why?
Freezing. Keep people from breaking in the place, breaking windows.
And why January 1? That's my first day you had
That's
available?
probably the first day I started.
Oh, I
I
see.
said, let's go get it done. We did.
And you did it on January 1st?
Yep.
And you had, what, plywood covers, is that what you're
Plywood
saying?
covers, the windows were what, about 5 by 6
5 by 6 or something like that. They're big windows. That swimming pool was a kind of well, I hate to put it this way, but it was kind of a dinosaur, wasn't it? Describe the inside of that swimming pool, that is the bottom part.
You mean the dressing rooms?
With the dressing rooms, yeah.
Okay. The dressing rooms, it was a oval-shaped pool, and the dressing rooms went around each side, men in one side and women on the other side. And the pool, the wall of the pool was part of the dressing room.
Right?
Everything was above ground.
And what was it a nice looking building, did you
Oh,
think?
yeah, fine looking. I only knew of maybe 3 of them. There was one in Michigan and one in Findlay, or not Findlay, sometime in Western, and then one in Steubenville.
Just
They
like,
call it Bintz Pool, or a guy out of Michigan built them.
what's the name of it?
Bintz, B-I-N-T-Z.
B-I-N-T-Z, Bintz Pool, that's what they were like.
And we were cleaning out some stuff down home the other day, and I come across the catalog that the pool was built under. It cost around $25,000.
$25,000. Now, since it was outside, you couldn't keep the water in there in the wintertime. How'd you drain it?
We had a drain.
And what did you just turn the drain on?
We turned the drain on, and it all went into Memorial Pond.
And how long did it take for that to drain out?
Just maybe a couple hours.
That's all.
Yeah.
And then how did you fill it in the summertime?
We had a fill on one end that come from the city
How long did it take to fill?
overnight.
That's it?
Yeah.
How many gallons was it?
Seems to me it was 110 gallons, something like that.
110,000 gallons?
110,000 gallons, yeah.
Right. Now then, you moved up to the new place, and you have this brand new place, you have new furniture, you have everything going for you. What are some of the things that changed, and then some of the things that didn't change? And I'm going to give you a clue on some of the things that didn't change, and that is the number of hours that you had to work. But what were some of the things that changed when you got up there?
Well, we had to have more personnel for one thing.
Number one, personnel. How many, you went from the 3 of you people to
Yeah.
how many?
We had to have a pool manager, an adult supervisor, and at least 5 guards, and 2 or 3 checker room people year round then, which we didn't have to have in the wintertime.
So you're talking about at least 10, 12 people right off the bat.
Yeah.
How many did you end up with when you retired?
I think we probably had maybe 50 people,
50 people. Compared to how many when you first started?
10, 12, including the part-time people we had in the summertime.
And that was it. What were some of the things that did not change? And I gave you one of them, and that was the fact that you had to work many, many hours. But what were some of the things that did not change?
We still had a number of programs. Well, of course, we had a little more up there because we had our own gym and weight room and stuff like that. But Recreation Commission didn't change. They're still there telling me what to do.
What about money?
Oh, man. like I said, we used about $25,000 a year at the old recreation center. The first year at the youth center, we were open maybe 3 or 4 months, and we spent $60,000.
60,000 a month.
Then the next year went up to 150.
So we went from 25,000 to $150,000.
When I retired in 1989, we were up to almost $400,000 a year.
$500,000 a year, approximately. $500,000. That's what it probably is right now.
They got more than that now. Well, they have to have more now because they pay more than we did.
When you left, if it's not too personal, you started at about $1 an hour. What do you suspect that you were making on an hourly basis when you left?
Probably about $15 an hour.
You're $15 an hour. You felt that that's what you got because you were still working about $3,000 to $4,000
Well,
a year.
I cut that down a lot.
Well, not at the very beginning, though.
Yeah, no.
At the end.
Yeah, at the end I did, yeah.
But at the very beginning, you were still working
Long hours.
many long hours. You come in there, you would be there. I was there many hours, many times at night. You were still there. I would come in the morning. You were still there. And it was always an impressive thing to know that it was under good, solid managerial scrutiny. And
Well, I always felt that if something's going to happen up there, I want to know about it.
That's
I
right.
don't want to hear rumors. I want to
No.
be firsthand.
What about the kids that came in? What kinds of kids came in at the very beginning, and then who started frequenting the Steiner Youth Center?
We had all the high school kids come in.
All the high
grade
school
school. We had a lot of them.
They all came in.
Yeah.
Did you have any people who came in on a regular basis and were troublemakers on a regular basis, or did you?
Troublemakers, no, we didn't have any. We didn't put up with troublemakers.
What did you do with them?
We put them out
How?
if we had to physically.
Physically. Do you remember any really serious problems that you had and people abusing the privileges that they had at the?
And, we had a streaker one time, but only once.
Only once. And I'm sure that was just for a split second.
Yeah.
And
He come in one door and run out across the lobby and out the other door.
what'd you do?
Let him go.
Let him go.
We told him we knew who it was. He had a bag over his head, but we knew who it was. And next time he come in, we let him know about it. And it never happened again.
Oh, you knew who it was?
Oh, yeah.
And what did he say? Was he embarrassed?
No, not a bit.
Didn't bother him at all?
Didn't bother him at all.
Jack, let's go back to your family life for a little bit and tell us about your home, your wife. Now we know who she is, Rosa. And tell us about your kids and who they are and where they are.
We have 3 kids. Mike, who works for First Medina Sales out on Broad Street.
Right. Car salesman.
Matt, who worked for General Tire and recently lost his job through a
Downsizing.
shake-up, yeah. And Melissa, who is a nurse at Barberton Hospital.
Okay, now how old are these kids?
Mike's 46, and Matt's got to be 44, and Melissa's 43, I think.
And they are living in
all
this
live
area?
here in town, yeah.
Right here in town. And who was your daughter married?
Ed O'Tanikar,
Ed O'Tanikar, young Ed.
young Ed,
Okay. And who are your sons married to?
yeah. Matt's married to Vicky, can't tell you her last name.
Was she from Wadsworth?
Yeah. I'll be darned, I can't think of her
It'll
name.
come. It'll come.
And Matt's married to a girl whose name was Linda Frederick, and I think she was from Seville or somewhere.
Seville.
Yeah.
And they all are right here in Wadsworth, as you say, and we see them, and they will be part of our history as we finally leave this place, and they'll take over. Another aspect of your life, which is something that gave great popularity to Jack Golz, occurred on Friday nights. Tell us about that, Jack.
You talk about playing football or announcing them?
Well, both, a little bit of both.
Well, I played football for Wadsworth until 1941, the last season I played.
And
but I spent 30 years announcing football games on Friday night for the high school.
30 years. Tell us a little bit about the evolution of announcing football games for Wadsworth High School on Friday nights during that 30-year period, starting at the beginning of it. What was it like, and then how did you finally end up doing it?
I think one of my boys, Mike and Matt both were still playing football in high school. And Laurel Mast asked me one time.
Laurel Mast was he
was one of the coaches then.
but he was also the athletic director,
Yeah,
wasn't he?
later, yeah.
Yes. His
And
wife is Norma Mast.
Yeah, and he asked me if I would do it one night. And it
just took.
kept going from there on.
Where did you sit the first time that you did it? Was it at the same place where you sat at the very end?
Booth
Up
on
in
the east side of the field, yeah.
Do you remember when that that was built, that announcer's booth was built?
Boy, no, I don't.
Do you remember when the stadium was built?
Yeah, I think the first year, 39 or 40, somewhere along in there.
That's correct. And do you remember playing in football before the stadium was built?
Yep.
And where was that?
Right there.
Right there. And what did you use for a stadium? How did the fans?
They had some, maybe 8 rows of stands on the west side of the field, but I don't think they were on the east side.
None on the east
The
side.
sidelines were roped off by sawed-off telephone poles put in the ground with the cable running through them. They kept everybody behind that.
And then OSHA came along and said, you better not have those things. People get killed on those. With their...
I think it was 40 or 41 was the year they opened up that east side stands down there with the dressing rooms and everything.
Right. Now the east side, so that we identify which is which. The visitor stands are on the west side.
Right.
And we'll call those the bleachers. And the east side is the
Permanent stands.
The permanent stands with the dressing rooms and the concession stands and so forth. It's not really exactly east, though, is it? It's kind of a northeast, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And the southwest. When you were playing football there, Jack, before they had the stadium, did you play on the Saturday afternoon or did you play on Friday nights?
Some Saturdays, well, I think the lights went in maybe in 1939 or 40. Up until that time, played everything on Saturday.
Everything on Saturday because that's when you had to do it in the daytime,
Yeah.
right? So you couldn't do it at night.
Once in a while, Friday after school.
Then the lights came on. And do you remember the first lights and how big, how bright they were?
Oh, yeah.
What were they like?
They had, the first lights they had out there, I think they had 4 poles on each side, maybe 16 to 20 lights on each one. And it was like daytime out there.
It was like daytime.
To us, yeah.
Yeah. But then what did we do with those lights? How did those lights improve over the years?
Well, I forget what year it was, but they took those down and put these ones that are in there now.
And now that
On
really
4
looks
poles.
like daylight, doesn't
Yeah.
it? It really looks like
I forget
daylight.
what they call these lights, but they tell me that,
Mercury vapor or Florida?
yeah, the bulb inside, you can't touch them with your hand.
Yeah, because
You gotta use a rag or something.
That's
to put
right.
those in, yeah. Or-
I think it's mercury vapor. I'm not really
Something like
positive,
that, yeah.
but it's not a regular incandescent bulb. Then when you started playing football and you saw people in those stands were built, you say, in about 1940 or so. Did more people start coming? Because at one time we didn't really have this Friday night mania, people going to football games, or Saturday afternoon mania, because people just didn't do that. It was perfectly legitimate for maybe 300 or 400 or 500 people. Is that correct? Then it started into the hundreds of people, and perhaps even 1,000. We're not really positive.
As the teams got better, more people showed up.
That's right. That's the teams get better, and they showed up. As you went through that whole history of 30 years of announcing the football games, who were some of the people whom you consider to be some of the outstanding players in that 30-year period, and did they ever go on to something professional?
Oh, one that comes to mind is a kid named Denny Beam.
Denny Beam.
He was a good football player. Lance Kearns, who's the athletic director up here now. He had a brother. I forget what his name was. And Huey Longfield, Ron Vader. They played with Mike, my son Mike Foy.
Mike Foy.
That's the year that Wadsworth went undefeated for 2 years. Those kids were on it.
Mike Foy's mother is Winifred Foy.
Yep.
Winifred Pike Foy.
Yep.
And anybody else?
Hard to remember those names.
Well, if they come to you, that'll be fine.
Okay.
We're going to go back to early Wadsworth. What were the stores that you remember when you were growing up? You had mentioned that there was a grocery store, the Curtis grocery store in the South End. What were the stores in the South End and the barber shops? And could you tell us what those were?
Well, right on the corner of Main and State Street, on the northwest corner, used to be a drugstore.
What was the name of that drugstore?
Freeman Drugstore, I think.
Freeman Drugstore.
And then next door, Harold Heiberg had a grocery store.
Right. And in Freeman's Drugstore, what could you buy? Besides, just about anything, right?
They had drugs, any kind you want.
They had anything at all. I mean, they had just like
It
a
was
regular
modern day drugstore.
modern day drugstore, which was unusual back in the 30s. And then Heiberger's. Tell us a little bit about Heiberger's grocery store and who Harold Heiberger was and what was he like?
Harold was a handicapped man. He was born without knees, as I understand it. But he always loved sports, and he always backed them.
As a matter of fact, I think Harold Heiberger might have been one of the first persons to join people like Ray Holcomb to start the Little League. But he backed sports.
Yes, he was.
That's right, exactly. Tell us a little bit about his personality. He was a quiet man. He had curly hair. Curly.
At last it was gray, but it used to be dark.
Yeah, dark hair.
No, Harold was the kind of guy, if you needed something, talk to him, he'd help you out.
Right. He also had, unfortunately, for the want of a better name, somewhat of a paralysis in his neck, and he couldn't lift his head when he talked to you. But everyone loved Harold Heiberger. Just an absolutely wonderful person.
He had that grocery store for years, and then he started the beverage store on the corner of Main and Rainbow.
Yes, Main and Rainbow.
Yeah,
that's not the beverage store that's right next to the mat shop.
No.
But the one down.
Yeah.
In Heiberger's grocery store, there was a taller man too. What was his name? Do you remember? Who looked something like Harold Heiberger, but he was tall. And he had white hair and curly as well.
That wasn't Larry Dean's father, was it? He used to work in there.
Well, I believe it was. And were there some women who worked in the store too? Do you know who they were?
I remember one girl was from Sharon, but I can't remember her name.
Can't remember her name. When you would go into, go ahead.
She was kind of in charge of the place.
That's right. When you would go into the place, would you go shop around at the grocery cart, or how did you do it?
No, they didn't have any carts.
What did you do? How did you get your groceries?
You couldn't hold it in your arm. You set it on the counter, and they'd count them up in. But I don't think they had any carts back then.
Nope. And did they have one of those automatic scanners?
No.
No. Did they have an automatic cash register?
No.
How did they write your bill?
Well, I think probably you could charge groceries there.
You could charge.
They had a little pad, they write everything down. But they had a cash register, but it was an old time.
Yeah, with the crank on it and all of that. Now, across the street from there were some stores and barbershops. Who had the barbershops and who had the stores?
Who had the barbershop? That wouldn't play. Frankie.
Postak?
Postak had one down underneath.
You had to go down some steps almost into the valley on the left-hand side. And then who had the barbershop on top? Was that Joe Police? Dudas. Charlie Dudas. Okay, Charlie Dudas, right. And then the store, which is immediately south of there, say, for instance, we were going to go down to Postak's barbershop, down the steps. There was a store there. Who had that store?
That was originally the Salvation Army.
The Salvation Army.
And then a guy named Fred Dilworth had a saloon there.
He had a saloon there, but two saloons within a block of each other down in the south end.
Then we had another one up across where they called the Rainbow, I think.
Well, the Rainbow now, but years ago it wasn't the Rainbow.
Oh, it was something else.
But it was on the other side of the street. So within one block area, there are three major saloons, two on one side of the street. What was the name of was there a grocery store down there right south of that saloon?
Later on, there used to be a butcher shop in there, Giles Butcher Shop.
Giles Butcher Shop, that's right. And how about the DiPolito brothers? Or the DiPolito brothers?
They came later. They had a grocery store in there,
Where?
Well, it would be just south of where Dilworth.
That's right.
The beer joint,
That's right south, and that pretty well takes up all of those.
Then later on, Ned Long owned that grocery store.
Ned Long, right. Ned Long then built a building on South Main Street near Johnson Road. And I think he's gone now, isn't he? Ned
I think so, yeah.
Probably so.
Yeah.
Let's go up the road a little bit and go to Swisher's, not Swisher's, but the sandwich shop there on the corner of... Tischer's, right. Tell us a little bit about Tischer's.
That years ago was owned by the Vincent family. They had a drugstore in there.
Vincent, that's right. Vincent's.
Jimmy Vincent.
Right. And the Vincents had more than a drugstore. Wasn't it kind of a variety store of some sort?
Yeah, they had records and stuff like that.
Things that had down there.
Somebody bought that out. Oh, Bob Fail bought it years later and made it a record store. That's all it was for a long time.
For a record store for a long time.
Yeah. Bob operated it.
Walk up the street, go past the mat shop on the west side of the road, and there was a store, or there was a restaurant right in the hillside there. What was that?
You're thinking of Stishers. That's
Stishers, yeah, Stishers. And tell us about that little restaurant.
Oh, that you used to get good food in there, boy. He was a ex-army chef, and he opened up that restaurant. You get hamburgers in there for a nickel.
Good hamburgers?
Oh yeah. He taught my wife how to make macaroni salad and stuff like that.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, we used to eat, when she worked at the Mass, she worked evenings or nights, and I'd meet her a lot of times for evening meal up there, and
What would a regular meal cost?
maybe 85 cents.
85 cents for the whole meal. What would you get for that?
Or you get some meat or probably a sandwich, macaroni salad, maybe a piece of pie, cup of coffee.
For 85 cents. 85 cents, that won't be by the coffee.
Oh, no.
Right. Now you walk up the street a little bit farther, and what do you remember about the injector office on the right-hand side, on the east side of the road?
They used to be down there across from the Mass Company.
The injector, but I mean the employment office when Earl Weldy was working in there.
One up top of the hill?
Yes, on top of the hill. What do you remember about that? Anything? You never worked at the injector then?
I did. When I graduated from high school, my dad was a foreman down there.
At the injector?
Yeah, and I went down there, I got a job right away.
And where was your dad the foreman in the injector?
In the foundry.
In the foundry. Who were some of the people who worked in the foundry? Do you remember?
Oh, Charlie Rowe, Bill Gorman, my dad, a guy named, can't even name, great big guy. Those are the main ones.
But most of the people who worked in the foundry were Italian, were they not?
Yeah, a lot of them.
Yeah, a lot of them were Italian.
Johnny Fig.
Johnny Fig.
Did you know him?
Yes, yes, I know these people. Now, we're going to go a little bit farther north, and on the right-hand side, on the east side of the road, there was a gas station. And what do you know about that gas station? Anything at all?
Oh, that's was a little gas station.
And who was it?
A lot of owners.
A lot of owners. Never really made much of a dent.
No.
Do you have any idea why?
There was a good location, I thought.
Very good location,
Yeah.
but no one never made a dent. And the only reason
They built that little building and put some pumps out front. They never did any more with it.
that's all they did. They didn't do anything at all except to give you gasoline if you went in there. And I'm not always positive that they had the most popular brands of gasoline.
I don't know.
Then we had the Methodist Church. Of course, that's torn down now and it's a parking lot, and then the high school and all. Now, we are uptown, and I say this with all affection, but many times the people from the South End didn't really get uptown very much. Why do you think that happened that way?
I don't know, but Saturday night used to be a big night in Wadsworth. You know, all the stores were open, and they had a place called Zarl's on the square there that sold popcorn and soft drinks and all that stuff. People go. And then on Main Street, you used to be able to park in the middle of Main Street years ago.
Yes.
And I know a lot of, well, Rose's family used to go park the car on Saturday night and watch the people.
That's all they would do. They would sit in their cars and watch people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember what the stores were from the high school drive up when you were growing up 70 years ago?
I think one was Western Auto.
Western Auto.
Klein's Clothing Store.
Klein's Clothing Store, that's right. Bob's Hamburger.
Bob's Hamburger. And
Tubasing's.
G&H Drugs.
That was after Tubasing's.
Yeah, Tubasing's, then G&H Drugs.
G&H Drugs.
Isley's.
Isley's.
Ladrick Shoe Store.
Ladrick Shoe Store. And Nielsen's
Nielsen's Jewelry Store. Right
Jewelry
on
Store
corner,
on the other side of the road. Let's start with Boami's Food Market on the Mills. What was up there?
Boami's, then the B&B Cut Rate Store.
B&B Cut Rate Store. Did you ever go to the B&B Cut Rate Store?
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about the B&B Cut Rate Store?
Well, it was run by two Jewish fellows, Sam Ackerman and Louis Ackerman.
Lou Ackerman and Sadie Kahn, his sister.
Yeah.
And then her husband, Ben Kahn, who's now dead. And
You
then
go in there and buy 3 candy bars for a dime.
That's right. That's right, exactly. I used to work there.
Did you?
Yeah, I worked there in the 40s, in the early
You
40s.
spent a lot of time in there.
Yep, that's a good place. You didn't have any money, you could go in there, you could come out with something good. Then we had Allen Hartzell, and then across the alley from Allen Hartzell, we had
IGA
store. And which IGA do you remember, the first one there?
Overholt and Freeburn.
Overholt and Freeborn. Then was substituted later by Abrams and Mansfield.
Right, Harold Abrams.
And then tell us about the hardware store next to it.
Prince Keller and Coon.
Prince Keller and Coon. Do you remember anything about that hardware?
Oh yeah, it's an old store. They had everything in there though.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, my uncle Glenn Leatherman used to run the coal yard for him.
That's what I was going to ask. That's why I stopped there, because I wanted to hear about Glenn Leatherman.
Yeah.
Glenn Leatherman then went from there to when they sold that store to the dime store,
Right,
the
5 and 10 cent store, right?
5 and cent. Ben Franklin.
Ben Franklin.
Ben Franklin. Then Glenn went with them, and he was your uncle.
Right.
How was Glenn your uncle?
His wife was my mother's
Your mother's sister, that's right, yeah. And we forgot a hardware store down the south end, and that was, of course, Basco. Yeah, we talked about those. We had those boys in here, did a beautiful job for us. And then there was another hardware store, Dick's Hardware Store. You remember that one? And what about Dick's Hardware? Who are the people in Dick's Hardware Store?
Dick, what was his name? Dick?
Walter Dick.
Walter
Yes.
Dick, yeah. Yeah, I remember that one.
Now we want to go back to the years that you were at the recreation department, and we're gonna talk about some of the things that you initiated at the recreation department. You came from a long line of people here in Wadsworth, that is, not long line in terms of your own family, but a long line of memories in Wadsworth and a desire to stay in Wadsworth and to do things for Wadsworth. You got to the rec center, and now you're in charge. Yes, you have bosses, we all have bosses, but you were in charge. What were some of the things that you brought to the rec center, which are still there today perhaps, or things that you thought were extremely important for us to do in the rec center?
One thing I can think of right off that is the swimming program, swimming lesson program, which is still in force today.
And how many people do you think you would have gone through that program?
Oh man, thousands.
Thousands of people.
Yeah. We used to have a set of lessons. We used to run them 3 times a year in the fall, winter, and spring, and then we'd move outdoors. But we'd probably have 300 kids in each one of those.
What about your adult swimming that you started?
We had adult swimming at noon, and then we'd have adult lessons on Saturday morning.
And what about evenings? Did you have some evenings too?
We kept it mostly open for open swimming in the evening. And well, the high school had a swim team, and they practiced there every night, but that was right after school till about 6:30. And we had a Wadsworth team. It was a bunch of amateur kids, and they'd practice maybe a couple times a week right after school, Saturday mornings.
You're being very humble. What about the infants program in swimming that you started?
Right, we started that too. But that was with the help of Jan Miller.
Okay.
Jan, I stole her from Barberton.
But who started these ideas?
Right, I suppose I did.
Of course you did. We would like to spotlight you and some of the other kinds of things that you did. Now, that's the swimming program. What about the sports program?
We always had basketball leagues and softball leagues, and we worked real close with Little League, Pee Wee football, and all those. We didn't operate those things, but we had a hand in it.
You had a hand in it, and a big hand, as a matter of fact. And now another one too. What about the exercise programs?
Oh yeah.
What was the first exercise program that came to Wadsworth under your aegis? And I'll give you a clue. About 70 women, and they were dancing to some raucous music.
Jazzercise.
Jazzercise. Yeah. Did you start the Jazzercise program?
Well, I got it in there.
You got it in there.
It just started other places.
Do you remember who some of the very first people were who took the Jazzercise? And I talked with one of them the other day. She is now past 50 years of age, and she was only about 30 years of old age when she started, or 25 or something like that. She was a teacher here in Wadsworth.
That's like everything else I can do.
She would kill me if I told her name, but she started the Jazzercise, and you got her involved with it.
Carol Slatke, I think you might be talking about.
No, I wouldn't dare say the name.
Carol was in it. Carol Slatke and Kaylin Weldy. A whole lot of people. I can't remember the name, but you know, I know them by face, but not by name.
Mm-hmm. But you started that program. I mean, you got the thing in there. You started another very big program. What was it?
I don't know.
What about the marble tournament?
Nah, I never started.
Oh, didn't you start the marble tournament?
No. That was started on at Wyworth.
Oh, at Wyworth. I thought
Wyworth,
that you started the
yeah.
marble tournament.
No, we never did that.
Oh, well, my mistake then. But I thought that that's what, you weren't going to tell us about the marble tournament. It was kind of a,
No.
the old-timers are the only ones who are involved, I believe, aren't they, the old-timers? And what about some of your senior citizens programs that you have up there?
Well, before we left the Civic Center downtown, we started that senior citizen program. What do they call it? I forget what they call it. They still have the name down there. But we got that program started down there, and then when we left, we changed a lot of the things on the main floor there for them to come in. And I can't remember the woman's name that worked with me on that.
Oh, well, we'll get some phone calls on this one, and we'll find out who that woman was. Just about every single night we get phone calls.
Do you?
Yes. And I'm pleased for that, because that means that people are watching the program, and we need to have them watch the program so that we can find out what history is of Wadsworth. We are, as a matter of fact, the Wadsworth Area Historical Society, which sponsors this program, is having its fall membership drive right now. And we're trying to get 200 members. We have 103 members now. We're trying to get 200 members by the end of the year. So anyone who wants to join, just call us up, and we'll be glad to take your membership. It's only $10 a year, or $9 a year, or something like that. For senior citizens, only $6 a year. There's no money involved particularly, but we'd like to have you. Jack, before we run out of time here, I want to go back to another aspect of your life, and that is your family. All of your family, one time or another, became involved with athletics. Give us the background of those and what they did and how well they did. Now, you may not want to brag about them, but it's perfectly okay, because we were just doing this so that we can have a historical documentation of what your kids did, your boys especially.
Yeah,
your daughter was no slouch either.
No, she was a cheerleader in high school.
That's right.
From the time she was in the 7th grade right on through her senior year.
And that's a really highly skilled athletic prowess that she was able to do, and a good cheerleader.
And her daughter is a cheerleader today up here.
She's her daughter's a cheerleader. Now, you've been a cheerleader, but not the kind that they are.
Yeah, Mike played on it. Well, I guess Matt played 1 year on it back in the 60s, 66, 67. Wadsworth had 2 undefeated football seasons. Mike and Matt both played on them.
And what was his position?
He played center.
Played center. He's very good.
He was maybe 6'2" and weighed 240.
Now, yes, he's a big boy, but it's all muscle. Now, when you were announcing the games and Mike was playing out there, how many times did you become a father and say, oh, he's going to get hurt?
Oh, quite a few times. Well, I never worried about getting hurt. My wife did that.
Oh, she took care of the worrying part. Yeah. But wasn't it a real thrill to be able to say your son's own name on there? And what about your other son? He played too.
Yeah, Matt, well, he was a place kicker. He had 30 points 1 year. He scored 30 touchdowns. And my grandson is the place kicker for...
Who's your grandson? Give him his...
Gary Golz.
Gary Golz, ULZ.
Yeah.
And he's in school right now.
Yeah, he's a senior.
He's a senior, and he's also a very, very good sports person.
He's doing double duty up here right now this year. He's a goalie on the soccer team and kicks extra points.
He does have double duty then. Yeah. One more question before we have to close this up, and that's concerning your very, very, very early days. When did you move from the South End to where you live now? Where do you live now?
I'm still living in the South End.
Ah, that's what I wanted to hear you say, because you never moved from there, just as I never moved from Silver Creek.
Well, I lived in different houses down there, but when Rose and I got married, we stayed with her aunt and uncle. And
which aunt and uncle?
Urban Kunkler and Amanda.
Okay, all right.
And she got sick, and everybody advised us, stay with them, don't leave them. They'll need your help. And we've been there ever since. 50 years we've lived in the same house.
And what house is it?
499 Main.
499 Main, which is on the east side of the road,
right.
About just south of Bergie, right?
That's south of Bergie, right.
South of Bergie, about what, 4 or 5 houses? And before you come to Tackus Drive.
Yeah, well, there's a Santee Court.
Right, Santee Court.
Right on the corner of Santee and Main.
Named after Palmer Santee.
Yep.
And Palmer Santee's wife was Edna Mager Santee, who died just a few years ago in her 90s. She was,
I didn't know that.
Edna Mager Santee. She was born on December 7th, 1895. and she died probably 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. So we then have you still living in the same area down there, and you probably will stay there forever.
Well, no, we're thinking right now, but we spent our winters in Tucson, and as a matter of fact, we're leaving tomorrow morning. But we're thinking about selling the house.
Jack Golz, you've been not only a very good interviewee, but you've been a very good influence on Wadsworth, and the city of Wadsworth needs to tell you that the things that you have done have really pointed the direction for thousands and thousands and thousands of kids. You deserve a medal for that, and we don't know what the medal looks like, but we surely have one in our hearts to give to you, because you certainly have made Wadsworth history an excellent part of the future of all of our people in Wadsworth. We want to thank you for that, and thank you for being on our program today.
You're welcome.